Welcome into another hour of Game Day Scoreboard. Joe Musso pleased to be alongside the two-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden as thoughts of Monday begin to creep into the mind, but we are steadfast on the task at hand. We begin with the Broncos and Chargers final in your evening window, 23-16. It was LA out in front prior to a late flurry from Denver that would come up short. Justin Herbert threw the ball 34 times, which is a change. 237 attempts and yards, both season highs for Herbie, as they get a win in division and move forward to 3-2. Back with the Mac. B-Mac, this was a game that maybe was going to lack explosivity from the get-go. We knew this was going to be nuclear fission. Just fire the atoms at each other at the line of scrimmage and see what sticks. What did stick here for LA? What was the winning aspect to the formula today?
Well, we saw hardball ball being put on display for 4 quarters. It's like we're watching the Big Ten mentality being surfaced in the AFC West when you look at the style of play for the Los Angeles Chargers. Look at this. As a team, 222 yards passing, 130 yards rushing. Balance. 3 penalties for the entire ball game. Smart football. Defensively, they forced the Chargers to be the Broncos to be 3 of 11 on 3rd down, and they forced 2 turnovers. That is Coach Harbaugh football right there. And when you talk about being healthy, now having Justin Herbert finally fully healthy for their offense, I mean, this is something that we should expect to see week in and week out, because to your point, they're not going to wow you with entertainment like play. They're not going to hit you with flashes of splash plays here or there. They're just going to play football the old school way, and they have really embraced this mentality. And I'm liking what I'm seeing, because think about some of the guys that we're seeing surface for the Chargers. J.K. Dobbins. He's been born again out there in La La Land. You look at Lad McCourty. You got some names that we don't really expect a lot of high-level play to surface week in and week out.
You're getting the most out of them.
But you're getting the most out of them. That's why Coach Harbaugh is one of the best coaches when you talk about being able to get the most out of the guys he has currently in the locker room. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what we saw today in Denver.
This was again, had Coach Harbaugh's fingerprints all over it, this game plan, as they will moving forward for this Chargers team. They've changed what they expect to be from last year to this, but this was also a defense staring at them that was beginning to find their stride in the Denver Broncos. Points per game, tops of the league. Where did you see things a little bit differently? Where did they struggle against this Harbaugh scheme today?
Well, I think the fast start was something that kind of surprised the Broncos. It's like being in a boxing match, and you come out and you expecting one thing, they hit you with a quick jab, and before you know it, your eyes about closed. They couldn't get out of their way, and then you talk about the untimely turnovers to start this ball game off. Remember, the first offensive drive for Denver led to that interception. So the Chargers got off to a fast start, and that's super, super important, Joe. When you're on the road and you're playing against a divisional foe, you want to get off to a fast start so you can pretty much efface the home crowd out of the ball game, and that's what we saw. They got off to a fast start, and they just kept it rolling for 4 quarters.
They did throw that first punch. Taking a look at some numbers coming out of this one, as the Chargers do walk away with a win. Last 6 games at the Broncos, well, they can put an end to that streak with a 23-16 victory, and it didn't even feel all that close. And for more, we take you out to the site where Jason McCourty and Tiki Barber are joining us, part of our family here at the NFL on CBS. Gentlemen, it's always a pleasure to spend some time here, and I want to go offense-defense for obvious reasons. Offensively, it appeared, Tiki, that the call sheet changed for the Chargers, or at least opened up. Was that due to a healthy quarterback? Where did you see things develop and evolve this week for that offense?
Well, as Jason and I talked about at the beginning of this game, it felt like the bye week for the Chargers came at the perfect time for, one, health, but also self-scouting. They were so dominant, run-heavy early on in games, 53 or 54% running the football, but they changed it up, and they threw the ball 8 of their first 9 plays on offense, and it helped Justin Herbert get into a rhythm. You started to see a lot of sustained drives in the first half of this game, and it ultimately got them out to a big lead at halftime, and they held on to win it.
As we take a look at the defensive side of the ball now with this Broncos team, Jason, this was a Broncos unit that was starting to feel themselves a little bit. Maybe some press clippings making their way up on the wall. Points per game, they've been stellar. Where did you see them take a step back, or where did you see them struggle here on Sunday?
Well, obviously, losing Pastor 10 in the first few plays of the games is a huge deficit for them, because he's a guy that allows Vance Joseph to call the game a certain way. And with how well Riley Moss had played on the opposite side, they were able to bring a ton of pressure in the games prior to. Played a little bit more zone today, but also just they weren't good on third down, and that was the biggest thing. The Chargers were able to sustain those 10-plus drives where they're just drawn out and continue to beat down on them, and that also enabled them to be on the field way too long, and their offense didn't help in that situation at all.
Yeah, and the counter you talked about, Joe, you talked about the Denver Broncos defense. The Chargers defense had been one of the best ones in the NFL as well, and you saw Bo Nix struggling with that. He couldn't complete first and second down passes. They couldn't run the ball very effectively. They were third and long for most of the first half of this game, and as a result, time of possession was heavily skewed in favor of the Chargers.
And decisive in their execution. That time of possession played a huge part in it. It's all part of this grand plan by Coach Harbaugh, but I want you to talk about that a little bit, because this was non-traditional in what we saw early. Coach Harbaugh having to take some time away with a medical episode. Still, his team remained on task. What does that tell you about the makeup of this group, Tiki, that despite seeing something non-traditional, they were able to go out there and execute the way that they did?
Yeah, it was an odd start to our game. We had a bunch of injuries early in the game. Jim Harbaugh, as you mentioned, he went into the tunnel with a health issue, but he ultimately came back. But I think the reason they were able to sustain it is because of how together this unit feels from a coaching standpoint. Jim Harbaugh knows Greg Roman, his offensive coordinator, from his days when he was the head coach, and Greg Roman was the offensive coordinator with the San Francisco 49ers. He knows Jesse Minter, who took over as the part-time, it was only for a couple of plays, head coach when Jim Harbaugh went in the locker room, because he was his DC at the University of Michigan. So there's some familiarity here that allowed them to just keep executing and not necessarily panic on the sideline because the head coach wasn't there.
When you build a culture and you're with the team all from the spring on, you kind of take on the mindset and the personality of your head coach. And whether he's there or not, you know what he wants and what his expectations are.
Personality of the head coach, that we know. This Chargers team will show up for a fight. Jason, Tiki, we appreciate your insight here on HQ as always, and enjoyed the heck out of that call, fellas.
Thank you, guys.
All right, here's a look at some Charger numbers. Fewest points allowed through 5 games here in 2024. The 4th fewest, just 66 points, leading to a 3-2 record and a win in division against the Broncos on Sunday.